Welcome. Here are the big takeaways from this Chapter 5 about identifying good measurement. Takeaway number 1, in this chapter we discuss measurement in psychological research and ways that we measure. One of the first challenges of conducting research in psychology has to do with measuring abstract, non-tangible phenomena that we like to study, such as thoughts and opinions and emotions, things like that. Making progress in psychological science requires we get specific and define our terms very carefully. Measurement is the process of describing abstract, non-tangible concepts in terms of specific indicators by the assignment of numbers to those indicators. A researcher assigns numbers to quantify high, medium, and low levels of, for example, stress or depression or self-esteem. Previously, we introduced operational definitions, the defining of variables in terms of the operations required to measure them. Operational definitions allow us to measure precisely and use quantitative measurement. Now, this is translating non-tangible variables into high, medium, and low numbers, levels, which subsequently allow us to use statistics, by the way. That's where we're going with these numbers. Takeaway number 2, the second big takeaway from this chapter describes the 3 ways in which we measure any psychological variable. Number 1, self-report. Self-report measures like a questionnaire with a numerical scale. Number 2, behavioral observation, counting the frequency of some behavior that we believe represents a mental state. And number 3, physiological measures like heart rate or blood pressure, again, believed to represent a mental state of being. All psychological variables must be testable and so must be made tangible and quantitative in one of these 3 ways of measuring: self-report, behavioral, or physiological. Psychologists can only study concepts that are measurable and observable. Note, in measurement and in this chapter, we distinguish between indicators and correlates, with indicators preferred over correlates. Indicators are a measurement that is assumed to be an actual evidence of the attributes or properties of some variable. From indicators, researchers infer 2 pieces of information. Number 1, the presence of a variable, yes or no, is it there? And then its nature or degree of presence. In other words, how much is there? How much anxiety, for example. We distinguish indicators from correlates, which measure phenomena that are one step removed, that just correlate or co-occur in time with our target variable. That's why they're called correlates. In your lecture notes, you see a few examples of indicators versus correlates. Notice that indicators are the more valid, accurate representation of any variable, and correlates are related but not so accurate. Finally, takeaway number 3 here, this chapter walks you through how behavioral observation measures are created. We produce a quantitative score from observations, a behavior checklist, of very specific behaviors that we believe represent a mental process or emotional state of the participant. Note that behavioral observation measures are most often used with children who lack the verbal skills to fill out a self-report questionnaire for us. Using a behavior checklist, we typically are counting the frequency of certain behaviors that we believe represent more or less presence of a mental process or an emotional state. So, in summary, the big takeaways from this Chapter 5 topic about identifying good measurement are these. Number 1, measurement is a procedure where a researcher assigns numbers to quantify high, medium, and low levels of those abstract, non-tangible phenomena that we like to study in psychology, like thoughts and opinions and emotions. Know that there are 3 primary ways to measure any variable: self-report, behavioral observations, and physiological measures. Second takeaway, distinguish between means of measurement, a better means of measurement over lesser ones, notably our preference for indicators over correlates. And number 3, read about the procedures for creating behavior checklists in this chapter to measure observable behaviors that we believe represent a mental process or emotional state, commonly used when studying children. Those are the big takeaways from this second part of Chapter 5 topic of identifying good measurement. Thanks, everybody.